official title?
9 p.m. anchor.
What is it like in the studio for you? What are you looking at? How do you communicate with your producer and your director in the control room?
Now we're almost completely automated, so the only people in the studio are the anchors, the meteorologist, and whichever reporter happens to be involved in that show. What we see when we first walk into the studio and get set, the monitors are blank. So after the control room, the director sets a shot and makes sure that our mic works, we'll ask them to put what we call program, what's going out over the air, in our monitors so that we can see how close a show is to ending, when they're in a commercial break and so on and so forth. And then we hear from our producer. We'll do an IFB check, make sure that we can hear him or her, and then they'll count us down to the show. A minute, 30 seconds, 10 seconds. And there we go. Here's how breaking news makes its way into the studio. Mm-hmm. We have an assignment editor who is the traffic cop of our newsroom. So he or she may be listening to scanners, taking a phone call from a viewer, maybe just seeing things on the web. And so a lot of times what shows up as breaking news on TV starts with them, and them hearing something on a scanner and then calling that agency, that police department, fire department, to confirm the information that they're hearing on the scanner, because what someone says on the scanner may not be what turns out to be the case once the emergency personnel get there. So that person is working to confirm the information to make sure that by the time it gets on air, it gets to us, it's accurate. So they'll notify the producer in the studio, or in the control room rather, who will determine where that story is going to go in the show. And that's when the earpieces that we use come into play, because they'll get in our ear and say, we're going to kill this story and we're going to add this breaking news story. And Catherine or Steve will read it. The story itself is a mixture of the information that you get from your producer that has just come into the station, and your general knowledge of the community or of a particular subject area. If we get a breaking story that deals with a fire someplace, well, you want the information about where the fire is, who's responding, if anybody's hurt, but it also helps to have some knowledge of the community so that you can say, this fire is by the Krispy Kreme on First Avenue, so if you're heading through Eastlake or Woodlawn, you'll want to avoid First Avenue because the firefighters need to be able to access that area. So it's a mixture of having lived in the community for a while and synthesizing that with the information that you get from your team.
I guess, is it easy reading the teleprompter?
It depends. I mean, the teleprompter in some areas of the studio is a long way away from where I sit. So it takes some effort, at least for me, as I get older and my eyesight sort of deteriorates a little bit. But the big thing for us is that with this almost fully automated studio is that we are operating our own prompters, which is something that happens a lot of times in smaller markets, but it's been an adjustment for me having to operate the prompter because it's a job. And so that actually takes a little bit of brain power to sort of keep up with not only what I'm doing, But with what Wes is doing, because I have to operate the prompter, even though Wes might not be reading from it, but he has typed out a forecast that folks who need closed captioning can see. So we have to operate the prompter for the folks who benefit from closed captioning so that they can read it at a sensible rate. We are not watching TV like people at home are watching TV. We're involved in something, be it running the prompter while Wes is doing weather, or setting up for our next story that we might have to read, helping out a partner, making sure that they're in the right place, or maybe their prompter controller fails, so you want to be on top of things so that you can help them out and operate the prompter for them if that situation arises.
Is there anything that you do to prepare to get on air? Any sounds you make? Any makeup? Do you wear any makeup?
Wow. Once I go through as many scripts as I can before I have to get up to the studio, I put on makeup. Not my favorite part of the day. I use makeup so that I don't get that much of a reflection from the studio lights. And so, people can listen to what I'm trying to share with them as opposed to, man, Steve's head is awful shiny. I'll gather my stuff, my iPad, my phone, my little keyboard, and I'll come up to the control room where we pick up our mic and IFB unit. At one point, I had a ritual where I would play a song on my iPad, something that would help me get excited, pumped up for the show. So, I could play Earth, Wind and Fire or De La Soul or Robert Glasper or The Roots. I'd feel better. I'd feel pumped up. But then JP would come behind me and play something like The Morning After by Maureen McGovern, and it would just completely ruin my mood. And let me be clear, the Carpenters did great music. Maureen McGovern is an awesome artist. They were all great at what they do. That's just not the sort of thing I was looking for
Before the show.
5 minutes before the show. But I haven't done any of that lately, so it's just about getting in the studio, getting set, and just sort of relaxing and getting ready to focus on making sure that folks in our area have the latest news. I think one of the biggest misconceptions that people have is that when they look at a newscast and they see the top story or the top 5 stories or what have you, that they think everybody in the building agreed that the top story ought to be the top story, or that the top story was the top story when they put the newscast together. There can be breaking news that happens 30 seconds before the show. And there can be an intense debate about whether or not to do a story, how to do a story, where in the newscast the story goes. And so it's a collaborative process. Not everybody is happy with every decision, but we're a team, and we do a job where we try to put our viewers first. Everybody's responsible for bringing some story ideas, so those can be things that you saw on the way to work, stuff that you read about or saw on a network, a phone call you got from a friend or a family member saying, hey, this just happened. We bring those into the meeting. We try to determine which ones will have the biggest impact on our audience. What does our audience want to see? What is it that's going to help them through their day or make decisions for the next day? So that's why if we get an indication that there's going to be severe weather, we know that matters to people. So yes, we want to give Wes and his team a large part of the show, but we also want to supplement what they're doing with whether or not there's a warming station open or a tornado shelter and that sort of thing. Who's canceling classes or who's reporting late to work and that sort of thing. As someone explained to me, being an anchor is not necessarily about reading the script. It's about imparting the information in a way that lets people know if one story is more impactful or deserves a different treatment, you should feel one way or another about a story, and helping people understand what the important part of the story is, and doing that by using your voice, using your inflection. That was something that helped me to get more comfortable with it.